Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Wednesday, February 12th, 2020. And here is our top story. The SEC publishes cybersecurity best practices for financial services. And joining me now to discuss this and more, cybersecurity expert Kevin Urso. He's the president of Connected Technologies, LLC. Kevin, welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a month or so since we've chatted with you, but that doesn't mean that the world of cybersecurity has stopped. And in fact, Kevin, the Securities and Exchange Commission just released a 10-page report kind of outlining some of the standards and practices that the financial services industry has undertaken to protect consumers. What can you tell us about this report?
So the report, it's a lot of the same things we've heard last year. When you look at it, the recommendations what they're seeing people are implementing are, I would say, like our top 10 things that a company should implement to make sure that they're secure and doing best practices. Things like access control, data loss prevention, having policies in place, internal monitoring. So there's a laundry list of things that a company should be doing as a best practice.
Yeah, and we'll put some of these things as we're talking. We'll certainly put some of these things up in terms of graphics. Kevin, as we talked about on the program before, I think it's great, number one, that the Securities and Exchange Commission is outlining these things, because as a consumer, as someone who uses banking and investment services and even financial planning, I want to know the strategies being undertaken. But I have to think, just based on, those big companies, those organizations have a lot of resources and a lot of money. There still has to be some vulnerabilities at the smaller business and middle-sized business level.
Definitely. Yeah. And, we've talked about this before. The big companies are spending a lot of money to do these things. Those medium to small never had to do this before, probably never budgeted for it before. And some of them may not know what to do. So articles like this and best practices like this are a good starting point to kind of spell out what needs to be done. And we're also seeing a lot of regulations starting to come out. Just this year, New York State issued the New York Cybersecurity Shield Act. Mm-hmm. So that's an act in New York State. I kind of equate it to the GDPR. I don't think we're ever going to have a federal regulation that says you have to do these certain things, but I think we are going to start to see each state mandate requirements.
And we've seen. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm just going to say, just as in you saw California with the Consumer Privacy Protection Act, CPPA. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Why don't you continue with your thought about New York State?
Yeah, so New York State's very similar. So it's a set of guidelines, very broad, but it's basically saying that if you do business in New York State, you're responsible for certain protections. You have to be taking reasonable protections for your employees' data and your clients' data. And what does reasonable mean? It depends on the business. It changes for each one. So they are, on purpose, a little vague. But I think there are certain things that every business should be doing.
And what might some of those things be, Kevin? Because I got to think, when you're talking to especially smaller businesses, middle-sized businesses who haven't, it's paralysis by analysis, right? You're getting hit with, you got to do cybersecurity, but on the same time, you've got to run a business. What are some of the things that you hear when you're out there talking to clients or potential clients?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing we hear is, I know I got to do this stuff, but it's not convenient for my business. It slows me down. And honestly, we have to set expectations at the beginning. A lot of the security is not going to be convenient, and we have to figure out a middle ground. We don't want to put so much security in that it stops your daily workflow, but we have to do enough that it's reasonable. So things like security awareness training for your end users, making sure you have a patch management program in place, making sure you have a really good disaster recovery and backup system in place. and maybe even in internal monitoring, someone watching your internal network to see if something's going wrong. I think those are all reasonable things that a small to medium business could do to get them to the next level of being secure.
So we hear a lot about these big breaches, Kevin. Wawa is recently comes to mind, but others that have happened in the past. This certainly has to be a concern. And I think, one thing that is hard to equate to a dollar amount is the loss of your credibility as an organization, whether you're a government, because governments have been breached. It's not like it's just private sector, it's governments have been breached, but your loss of credibility in maintaining data. And as we continue to generate data, we just had a story last week about big tech getting into healthcare. They're going to be using a lot of data. I got to think that, first and foremost, as we rely more on data, your credibility as an organization is at stake.
Definitely. Yeah. So when we sit down with clients, potential clients, I hear a lot. Hey, I don't really have anything, or why would someone come after me? And I try to explain to them and say, but if you're a lawyer, if you're a financial expert, you rely on your reputation, your credibility. Now, if word gets out that a client's data was breached because you didn't take some basic steps, that's a significant event in your business.
Yeah,
you're gonna have
absolutely
a tough time building that trust back.
Yeah, you'll get crushed. Would you want to do business with someone who couldn't secure your data? That is a reality. Kevin, not to jump around on you on this, but in terms of the financial services and specifically the retirement industry, we haven't yet, that we know of, been subject to some of these breaches. But we did have a recent case, and I know you're not an attorney, neither am I, that I think it's related to Shell Oil is being sued, and some of the cases around the use of data. I have to think that this issue, whether you're in retirement, whether you're in financial services, whether you're running a manufacturing company, or whether you're running a healthcare or higher ed organization, all these things kind of percolate, and you have to take a look at some of this litigation, and that will also guide your decision making.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think the first step any organization needs to do is they need to know what they have, what type of data they have, what they need to protect, what they need to control. Who should be able to have access to what data. A lot of companies haven't even done that first step where they know what's important to them.
Yeah, and I've worked for organizations that are responsible for tens of billions of dollars, at least in terms of providing investment guidance or managing. And some of them are still using, like, you remember the days, you and I are old enough to remember the days of like shared files, right? And the permissions on these files, like you just go into a folder in your, Microsoft Windows 10 subdirectory, and anyone can access what I would consider to be important documents for clients. And a lot of that is not really, segregated by accessibility.
Right. Yeah. This stuff has built up over time, over years, and it's been layered on top of each other. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it is a little bit of a challenge to take a step back, analyze what do you have, what we need to secure, and that's really the first step. You have to know what you have first.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kevin, I want to hold you over. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk to Kevin more about these SEC guidelines, or at least this report, and we'll talk more about what you can do in terms of protecting your organization and yourself as a consumer from cybersecurity bad actors. So stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Welcome back. We're talking to Kevin Urso. He is the president of Connected Technologies LLC. Kevin, thanks so much for sticking around with us this morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a really important topic, and you and I were trading emails this over the past week. And there was an amazing report out about some of these airports, the top 100 airports that I think are vulnerable to cybersecurity risks. So you can have, Kevin, we're talking about the SEC report, which is 10 pages long and details what the financial services industry, but you can have airport authorities, you can have governmental entities that are just as at risk as anything else. Oh,
yeah. I mean, and the problem with airports, think about what you, when you're traveling, what you connect to, what you're doing. The Wi-Fi is so good these days, you don't think anything of it. But you have to be cautious and protect yourself. So there's certain steps you can take to protect yourself when you're connected to those open networks.
So let's talk about that. I mean, what can we do? I mean, a lot of people go to Starbucks, not that they support the brand, the show, although, hey, always wanted to do some partnerships, but Starbucks or Panera or the airport, what can people do to protect themselves and their data and their corporate networks? Because that's its concern.
Yeah. So if you're connecting from an open network, airport, Starbucks, whatever, you want to make sure you're using a secure encrypted connection, and you do that by using a VPN. So a VPN, what it does in its simplest form is it connects you back to your corporate network, and it encrypts that data that crosses that wireless network. And when I say encrypts, it means it scrambles it up so no one else can read it. And on the other end, it descrambles it so you can do your work. In the past, you would see a lot of people would connect with remote desktop. That was a very easy way to get into your work, get into your home, your work computer. But they weren't using a VPN to do it. And there's been two recent announcements from Microsoft where those connections have a flaw in them. So if you're just using the RDP connection, a hacker can take over that and potentially get into your system. So the VPN is very, very important.
And VPN stands for Virtual Private Network, is that correct?
Correct.
And then, Kevin, some people use those mobile hotspots through Verizon or Sprint or some of the other companies, or they'll use their device as a hotspot. How safe are those? So, how safe is it to use this?
Yeah, so that's definitely safer than connecting to open Wi-Fi, like at an airport or things like that, because it's your private Wi-Fi. Now, you do want to take some steps there too. You want to make sure that you've put a good password on there, you've secured it, so other people aren't connecting into it. But that I would say that's a step in the right direction if you have that. Yeah, but then there's, if you're a personal consumer, there's added cost to that. I think a lot of people, we've been it's so ingrained in our society now, the carrier devices and to check in email, and people are, they're logging into these open networks, and those open networks, whether they're in an airport or in a restaurant or, a baseball stadium or a football stadium, because they have those now. I mean, there's some real risk there, and we haven't seen, network crashes or data breaches maybe at a very high level, but I got to think that is coming at some point. Hackers are definitely going to be pushing the limits there. Yeah, that's a very easy hack. So one thing I do sometimes when we do a seminar for people, at a hotel, or whatever, and they're on the free Wi-Fi. We launched the application, and that application shows us all their activity in plain text. We can just read it, and that's mind-blowing to people. They're like, wow, I had no idea that it was that simple. And it's really just something you can go online, download for free, sit in the Starbucks or sit in the open Wi-Fi area and view everyone's traffic around you. So if you're logging into your bank account, if you're logging into a financial system, your home network, you're giving away that information.
That is incredibly scary. And not that I didn't know that, but when you put it in those terms that people can just read texts and emails, I mean, that is really scary and powerful. Kevin, it's funny. Not to change gears completely, but I saw a video recently of someone, the credit card scanners or the ATM scanner, someone actually inserting a scanner on top of the device just by sleight of hand. It looked like something out of David Copperfield, where the guy put that in and then they were skimming credit card information through that. I mean, that is that, and these guys did not look like they were super sophisticated. Of course, looks can be deceiving, but this probably happens more than we know.
Yeah. I mean, most of the breaches and the hacks you see today, they're not being done by, they're being done by well-educated, well-organized groups, really. So they're well thought out. They're usually pretty advanced. So we do have to do our due diligence, train our staff, make them aware of these things. Sometimes people just aren't aware that risk is there. So if you're aware when I connect to the open Wi-Fi that there's a potential risk, you'll kind of vet what you do on that.
Yeah. And Kevin, you're not a national security expert, and I don't want to put that, but I want to ask this question anyway. I mean, a lot of hacking is done from, sovereigns, right? Sovereign organizations, sovereign companies, or countries, I should say, not talking well today, but sovereigns who employ hackers to go into other countries' systems. This is a risk to power grids. This is a risk to financial networks, stock exchanges. That could really collapse not only a business or businesses, but collapse an economy. Definitely.
And, if you look at it, if you're trying to break into a home, right, you're not going to try to go into the steel locked door. You're going to try to go around back and try to find an open window, right?
Yeah.
And that's how I equate the small to medium business. So what they'd use is this small to medium business to get into a network who maybe does work with this larger national firm that's a target. And that's how the hackers are getting in. The big organizations spent a lot of money, a lot of effort to secure. So the easy entry point is the medium organization that has some type of relationship with that larger group.
Yeah.
So it really falls on all of us to, when you look at a national level, it falls on all of us to kind of help protect the national system that we have in place.
Absolutely. Last question, Kevin. I know you're very active with the Hofstra alumni, Hofstra University out on Long Island, where you attended school. What can you tell us about some of the, I haven't been to college in over 2 decades. I'm hard to believe. But what can you tell us about some of the students that are learning the newer technologies? They're learning cybersecurity. They're learning coding, right? I mean, that they are the future of protecting our economy.
Definitely. Yeah. So you'll see a lot of universities now they're starting up cybersecurity programs where you can come out of school with that certification or that that knowledge base. Hofstra is a good example. They actually have a cybersecurity lab, if you would, where they can bring the students in and they do simulations of an attack, and the kids figure out, how do I defend against that? How did it happen? So yeah, there's a big uptick we're seeing in that.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, I'm glad to know that
local government. The last event we went to, the FBI was there. So they're trying to pull it all together.
Yeah. And just be clear, the FBI was there to present. They weren't there looking for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Kevin, great to talk with you. I'm glad that you were on our side. Thanks for giving us, analyzing the Securities and Exchange Report and also giving us some just basic tips. And we'll have you back on the program very soon.
Great. It's a lot of fun. Thank you.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Hope you found it educational as well as entertaining. Hey, have a financial topic or someone of interest that you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, and so much more, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Waiting here for you to take and drink of. But if you're tired of the same